welcome to Houston Refugee Stories of Courage. I'm Patricia Gras. Houston is one of the top resettlement cities in the United States. Local agencies report between 3,000 and 4,000 refugees arrive here each year, fleeing persecution and war. Refugees are here legally and able to work. In better times, they used to get 36 months of support. Now they only get 3 months of cash assistance. There are 4 major resettlement agencies that use private funds, unpaid overtime, and volunteers to find them jobs after a few months. And this is becoming increasingly difficult. Today we'll speak to 3 guests who work with refugees in different capacities. But before we begin our conversation, we'll watch the stories of 3 women refugees from Burma, Congo, and Bhutan. There are roughly 160,000 Burmese refugees living in Thailand. Many came in the mid-90s following a series of government military offensives against opposition movements.
We were living in the bank of the river. So my mom selling goods. My dad is a carpenter. He builds boats. He builds house. It is peaceful.
During the conflict, ethnic groups living in disputed areas were subjected by the government to forced relocation, detention, arbitrary arrest, as well as repression of cultural and religious identities.
The conflict is about the civil war. I'm not really sure. And they burned down the village.
Mary Say's family is Christian and belongs to one of the minority groups, the Karen. The Burmese government associated all Karen, even innocent civilians, with the armed resistance and began to force them out. At age 7, Mary went from total freedom to a practical prison.
The camp was surrounded with a barbed wire.
She quickly learned leaving the camp could mean rape or death. They lived in a bamboo hut, 5 in a room, and had no electricity or running water. Safety inside the camp was not assured either. 2 years later, the Burmese military burned down her first camp.
We lost everything.
28 days prior to the fire, she lost her father to an unknown illness. Despite the hardships, she excelled in school, but with no hope for a better future.
The hardest thing for me is I really wanted to go out of the camp and work, be like other people do, like a Thai citizenship.
In Houston, Mary's still very close to her family. They were all able to emigrate after 14 years of living in the camp. They arrived in Houston just a few days before Hurricane Ike.
Hello.
Since moving here, she's found a job as a leasing agent, helping other refugee families in her apartment complex.
In my country, if anything happens, like you want to talk, but people are like, you don't have the right to speak up. Here in the United States, you have the opportunity to study if you're a hard worker.
And she's proven to be. Mary plans to become a nurse and build a better life for her family. Tentina Munganga, who speaks 4 languages, cleans emergency rooms at Bentop Hospital for a living. But what she wants most is to purify her mind of a tragic past.
I remember this man, it was the wife that was a Rwandese, but the man had to die because of his wife, because they told him, don't follow your wife, we are going to kill your wife. He said, if you're going to kill my wife, just kill me with my wife. And he just lost his life like that.
During the Rwanda massacre of 1994, nearly 12,000 refugees per hour crossed into her city of Goma in the Democratic Republic of Congo, creating a severe humanitarian crisis.
It's like kind of the end of the war because you will see more than hundreds people die on the street.
Soldiers from Rwanda and Uganda began a war to overthrow the Congo's Mobutu regime, and in the process, all sides killed thousands of innocent people. It was also the beginning of the use of sexual violence as a weapon of war.
There was this woman, she was pregnant. They wanted to kill her. If she gave birth to a girl, they would just kill her. And thank God, for God's glory, she was able to give birth 3 boys. And that's why she got saved.
At the time, Tantine's husband was working as a human rights activist. He soon became a target, and they were forced to flee to Uganda. They lived there for 9 months. 10 people in a one-bedroom apartment. Then they were allowed to resettle in Houston. During her first years while raising 4 children, she put her husband through school. Then, she says, he left her, so her own dream of going to school was shattered. Her faith has kept her strong.
I just decided to leave everything to God. That's why I just have peace in my mind.
Now, after a painful divorce, her eyes are on the future and her children.
Don't just give up.
Joyce, come on.
And don't be discouraged. Love God first and love yourself and move on.
We didn't think that we will end up like this because we had everything, our land, our home, our school, our small village. Still now they call us terrorists.
Kina Misra is one of roughly 500 Bhutanese resettled in Houston. She was just 8 years old when her family was expelled from Bhutan, a small country tucked between China and India. Her ethnic group of Nepali origin, the Lotsampas, became a target of the ruling monarchy. In the 1980s, its racist policies did not allow them to practice their Hindu religion or speak their language. But all she remembers before the exile was a peaceful existence.
In Bhutan, there is no conflict between the people. It's only the king.
About 100,000 Bhutanese were stripped of their citizenship and persecuted.
I heard that they give very bad torture.
Keen and her family eventually fled to a refugee camp in Nepal 2 years later, where resources were scant.
We have only one plastic, that's it. When the wind comes, the sand comes to our food, everything. We have to throw and cook another one. And we don't have a good water. We have to take water from the tube well.
The water was contaminated, and she got deathly ill.
I was lucky because 3 people ahead of me from the same disease, they died.
Add those together, we should get the same thing.
After 16 years in the camp, Kina finally came to the United States in 2008. She wants to be a nurse.
How long have you been here in Houston?
She's now working with newly arrived refugees at Houston Community College. And she has great hopes for her future.
Try to be something. Because this is the place you want to make your dream true. You can make it.
To discuss the lives of refugees, how they get here, what they experience, and how they contribute, we have with us Maliha Imami, Director of Health and Case Management Services at one of our refugee agencies, the Alliance for Multicultural Community Services. A former Fulbright scholar, Ms. Imami has extensive worldwide experience on issues of women and immigration. Therapist and social worker Rosalie Hyde co-founded the Houston Galveston Trauma Institute. She has a special commitment to those affected by war and genocide, especially refugee women. At the University of Houston Law Center Immigration Clinic, she guides social work students to support victims of other countries seeking asylum in the U.S. after torture, domestic violence, or sex trafficking. A psychiatrist, Dr. Sophia Banu, created the program for survivors of torture at Bellevue Hospital in New York before coming to Houston. She speaks 7 languages and has treated survivors of torture from all over the world. She's presently at Baylor College of Medicine and recently started a clinic for international trauma survivors. Thank you all for joining us. And as we saw in the story, Dr. Banu, since you've been to the camp we just saw, these people get caught up in situations they have no understanding of. That's what it appears to me to be.
Yeah, that's true. The situation that they're in the refugee camps, it's really terrible because there's almost next to nothing. They are struggling to survive, and then they come here as refugees, and here again they have to struggle all over again.
Let's talk about what we didn't do in the stories is we didn't explain how they get here, how they get chosen, and how few of them actually get out of the camps. So, Maliha, could you address that?
Yeah, it's a very complicated process just to get the refugee status. A lot of the times when you talk to people, they cannot tell the difference between an immigrant or a refugee, and they mix the two definitions. A refugee is a person who has left the country without their will. They have been forced to flee their country, and they cannot return back to their country because they face persecution.
They can never go back.
There's well-founded, grounded proof that they cannot go back. So whether it be national origin, whether it be religion, their ethnicity within or a political party that they're affiliated with, they can never go back. So therefore, they have been forced to leave. And UNHCR, which is United Nations High Commission for Refugees, gets involved, gives them that status, removes them from the first place of asylum. Usually, once they leave the country, they're put in the first place of asylum, and then from there they move to another refugee camp. And they wait till a resettlement country. There are 26 around the world, United States being one of them, and the lead country in the world that receives refugees. They say we will take X number of people coming into the United States this year from this particular country, from this particular camp, and then if your name is on the list and you have chosen United States as possible place where you would want to be resettled, that's when you are given an opportunity. And you could live in a refugee camp from 10 years to
20
35
most
years.
of these people live there 20 years.
Yeah, they grew up in the camp, and that's a very significant thing.
Yeah. Rosalie, there are a lot of myths about refugees. People, I mean, even when I went to World Refugee Day, I hardly found any mainstream culture people there. I wasn't that much aware of how many refugees we had or what types of refugees. What are some of the myths? Because some people believe, oh, they're just coming here to take our jobs, or they're not here legally. What are some of the myths that refugees face when they get here?
Well, I think the primary myth is that they are an immigrant like other immigrants, and this is a legal immigrant who is here legally, who has been welcomed into the United States and approved to come and offered services as the first world's effort to help peoples of the world, and we certainly do that as Americans. So one of the myths is that they're illegal. The other one is that they would somehow want things that would be otherwise given. Right. And these are generally people who work harder than you can imagine. They've gone through incredible things and are willing to do almost anything in our culture to be able to survive and assimilate. So I think that's another myth, that they would be taking from our culture.
Yeah. Or that refugees don't pay taxes. That's another one you hear.
That's a myth.
And refugees do pay all the taxes that we pay. The only thing they don't do is they don't vote, because they're not citizens until they're citizens.
Until they become citizens.
So they pay all taxes that we pay as well.
Dr. Banu, I can't imagine what these women, at least the women that I met, have gone through. They saw women get raped right in front of their eyes. They saw people get killed. They saw all kinds of violence, even against children. How do you cope with that? They come to this country. They have to face a new culture, a new language, no job. How do you help them quickly enough? Because apparently they only have 3 months to get a job. So how do you help them?
Well, you're absolutely right. Having gone through so much in their past countries, they are trying to survive in a new country where they don't speak the language, where they don't know the culture. So what I try to do when they come to see me in the clinic is to first create a safe environment for them, because that's of utmost importance. They've lost everything. They have no control over everything that's been going on in their lives. So to give them a sense of empowerment, I create a safe environment, and then after doing a thorough psychiatric evaluation, determine whether they need medications for symptoms of anxiety, depression, or post-traumatic stress disorder. Like, they may not have slept for months or years because of nightmares or flashbacks and not able to function or take care of the families. So either medication or therapy, or individual therapy or group therapy. Then I also refer them to primary care physicians who would then take care of untreated medical illnesses that they've had for years and not gotten
that's
any
another
treatment.
Issue, the health.
Yeah. And then women who've had female genital mutilation done, I refer them to an OBGYN and social work for other services.
But we want to understand also that there are best practices that are established to provide for refugee populations, both in mental health and in kind of general care, and they are usually housed in primary care settings with all kinds of other services, including psychiatry, including social work, including legal services sometimes, as you well know, given your your experience in New York. There are best practices out there. We just don't have the funding in Texas to provide those. Yeah. Dr. Banu works very, very hard, but she has 4 hours a week to provide specifically for her international trauma program. Isn't that right?
That's true. Yeah, it's true. And ideally, a group therapy where members could talk about their past experiences, give them a sense of hope. Like when you hear somebody they've been through horrific things like they have, and then they hear that and they hear how they've coped with it and then gone forward. That helps them. That gives them strength, and that gives them some kind of empowerment. Also,
and it's also important to understand that just because they're refugees, their experiences have not been similar as well.
Right.
Because
they're
where
not
they
the
come
same,
from.
right?
To normalize the feelings that they're going through.
Yeah, that they're not alone as well.
Well, and I understand, like, they also create communities within. Once they get here, they all live like the Burmese live together, the Bhutanese live together,
true.
and they create sort of what they had back home in a way. Can you kind of address that?
It's very interesting because once certain community starts moving to a certain apartment complex, they'll have their place of worship, they'll have the community groups will form, and certain Bhutanese groups have formed in Houston in the last couple of years. Somali groups have formed, and so they become the voice for the community. They are the ones who are adamant about maintaining the culture so that they don't get diluted within the mainstream. They maintain some of their culture as well, and they become spokespeople for the community, and they keep alive the sports from back home and arts and crafts that they did. So it's really beautiful how communities kind of bind together and kind of maintain their culture.
And what I noticed too is that they help each other.
Yeah.
I mean, here they come from totally, they don't even speak the language, and they're helping each other. They're giving each other cheese and bread. I saw that, the bartering that goes on. It's really very, very interesting. What would you say, doctors, both of you work with them on a psychological and a psychiatric basis, what is the hardest thing for them to assimilate to the United States?
I think there's so many different factors. It would be really hard to say the hardest. In fact, the hardest thing is that there are so many different kinds of adjustments. I mean, there are cultural and role-defined adjustments that in America, if you come from a traditional society and you're a woman and your life is about the home and family, and you are now expected to go out and find a job in a culture where you may never have had plumbing.
Never even worked in your life. And you worked in different ways. You never got paid for it.
But you never may have seen a hospital as we know it, and you go work in a hospital or in a manufacturing place or something. So these are
a simple thing as riding a bus. I've had clients who've never ridden a bus before, so they don't even know how to do it. So we actually had a group, and I had a Nepalese psychologist who would teach them how to ride the bus. That would be one of the sessions that we had. So,
or it could be something basic like how the family dynamics change, because now all of a sudden children assimilate really quickly, so they learn the language, and they become interpreters for their parents.
Exactly.
And so they're going with them. They're going to the leasing office with them. They're going to the clinics with them. So they work as the power dynamics within the family changes, right? And especially if it's an older traditional setup of a family, there's
and we'll talk now about that. We'll follow up. We first need to discuss also that you've heard that the refugee agencies are scrambling to keep up with less government help and smaller staffs, so they're increasingly depending on volunteers to help. We spoke to one of the many volunteers and asked her why she chose to do it.
I first got involved with refugees through a women's group that I was working with. We were introduced to a group called the Community Cloth, an organization that empowers refugee women here in Houston, using their talents and their skills to start a business.
These women are part of the nearly 2,000 refugees from Burma who've come to Houston in the last few years.
She says she can't really see well.
Preschool teacher Liz Unger takes the bus to teach refugee children at Los Arcos Apartments, home to hundreds of newly arrived refugee families.
Because there's a language barrier, it's difficult to have structure as far as a routine of class time. One of the reassuring things is to see the shade drawn, and they know, class is going on today. There were 5 in the bed, and the lion said. We started out with small little toys and talking about how to use the toys. All over. What month this says?
These kids are from 4 different countries.
The children treat each other with respect in some ways, which is really interesting because even though they don't have the same language, They've come from a same type of background.
A background of trauma, displacement, and years of living in deplorable conditions in refugee camps.
The children are so enthusiastic and they want to learn.
And what was it like living in the camps?
Her life now revolves around refugees. Back at school, she doesn't just teach.
Okay, so can we make it later today?
Helping mothers who need a translator for a doctor's appointment.
In Nepal, did you have names for monkeys?
Or learning cultural nuances to teach the children best.
Can you cut that?
But what she tends to celebrate most is finding a common humanity
that would be fun.
With these new Americans.
I just hope that I can, assist the families and their children in making sure that their life here in America is successful. This has just been an incredible experience, and it's changed my life. I can't see myself doing anything else.
Saturday. Yay! Round of applause.
The children always give us hope, don't they? Dr. Banu, you deal with trauma every day. You're listening to these horrible stories. But what can we learn from them? What can we learn about resilience from refugees?
I have worked with a lot of trauma survivors in Nepal, in New York, and now in Houston. But I did not create the program in New York, but it was created by Dr. Alan Keller. The program here, the Clinic for International Trauma Survivors, is something that I started. Okay. So I just wanted to clarify that. Despite all that they've been through, the strength and the determination to survive and to assimilate back into a new society is what really amazes me when I see these refugees struggling to survive, and they go on to becoming productive, successful members in our society. And I'm reminded of a very nice example of a Tibetan refugee woman who I know personally came to New York many, many years ago, lived in a tiny studio, like really, really tiny, with 6 other refugees, struggled hard. She was away from her family. She would work during weekdays. On weekends, she would collect her wares on her back, take the subway and go to a flea market and sell whatever she could sell. And to make a long story short, she now has her own business. She's a successful businesswoman. She owns her own home, and her daughter's in a medical school, and her son serves in the U.S. Army. So many inspirational stories of resilience we hear day in and day out, and that gives us the strength to keep working with them.
And ladies, what are the advantages of Houston having so many refugees? Because we're one of the top 3 resettlement cities in the country. What are the advantages of having refugees in our city, do you think?
Well, I mean, ultimately, we have a workforce that is, willing and able to do a range of different kinds of jobs, from labor jobs and manufacturing jobs to professional jobs. For example, Iraqi refugees are often professional people coming in as engineers and as doctors. So we have a workforce.
Right. Yeah, that's very diverse and very willing to work. So refugees, the strongest thing that I've seen in refugees is that they are so eager to work. They are so eager to begin a life and start a life. And you pick them up from the airport and they get in the car and you show them Houston on the way back from Hobby Airport, and the first thing they look at the city and say, like, when can I start working?
Right.
And they're really excited about it. They bring different skill set to the city, and that's really important. They start lots of businesses, lots of refugees, end up creating businesses and hiring other people. And actually, if you hire a refugee, you do get tax breaks. Certain businesses do get tax breaks as well. And I think you can visit the Labor Department website and see there are 9 different categories of people that if you hire them, you get tax breaks, and you can see if your business qualifies for that. As well. So
now I know that the agencies are really suffering in the sense that there's not a lot of funding for them right now. What are the greatest needs for refugees right now when they get here? What do they need?
As somebody who works in a refugee resettlement agency, I would say the way the whole resettlement process is set up, it's very geared towards employment. Self-sufficiency is defined as employment. So it's like 30 days, 60-day, 90-day you should be employed. That's
which
the
is
goal.
Almost
which
impossible
is almost
for even a regular person to do.
Exactly. It's unrealistic in many ways. So, yes, I would say finding a job that they can support their families on would be number one priority.
And some of the people end up homeless. I understand a lot of people end up homeless.
Especially symptomatic people who have psychiatric symptoms. Remember, this would happen to each of us.
Yeah.
Given that set of circumstances, this is just a normal adaptation, these psychiatric problems, depression, anxiety, PTSD. So, you know, this would be another piece that we would hope for, that we would be able to provide that we can't now, which is a kind of globalized program that screens and treats people for all of their needs, both physical and mental health needs, which would help them function, which would help them get these jobs. Now the expectation and the pressure is to get a job in an environment where Westerners are having trouble getting jobs, of course, but they need lots of different kinds of support.
So, and it's very sad that they reach that stage, and because if they did get treatment, if they were identified and they got treatment, because most of the refugees that I've treated do not require long-term treatment, they require treatment for a short-term period.
Oh, really?
They pick up their pieces and they walk.
They're very resilient. They seem to be more resilient
Learn
than
their
other
language, you know, get a job, and wants to educate their children, wants to make a better life for themselves because they feel safe and secure in America. Yeah. So if they fall through the cracks, and then that whole system is slowly, you know, failing them. So.
Well, it amazes me that even the women that we featured in this program learned to speak English just within a year, and a language that is completely different from their language. So it's really admirable. Well, thank you so much, Malia Himahi, Rosalie Hyde, and Dr. Sophia Banu for joining us and for the work that you do. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
If you're interested in volunteering for refugees, you can call the Alliance at 713-776-4700 at extension 128. And don't forget, we're always interested in what you have to say. So if you have a question or comment about the show, call us at 713-743-8513 or send us an email at refugees@HoustonPBS.org. And for more information on refugees and how you can help, go to HoustonPBS.org/refugees. Thank you for watching. So that went really fast.